We now know the teams that will at least try to play their way into the playoffs and then the other playoff teams. So let's take a look at what we know right now, anyway, playoffs wise in the NBA as we kick off, or tip off, I guess, our NBA playoff preview. So the playoffs are here, and the play-in gets going on Tuesday evening. This isn't going to be a deep, in-depth breakdown, just a couple quick thoughts on the series that we know right now. Let's start in the Western Conference. The Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trailblazers are the 7-8 matchup. A couple of really good stories. Storyline-wise, the two play-in games, I think, match up in the West with Phoenix against Portland and the Clippers against Golden State, where you have Phoenix and Portland kind of, they're a little bit different. Like, Portland's kind of this younger team on the rise. Phoenix, no one really saw this coming after the Durant disaster and everything like that. But for both of these teams to be here is a really cool story. I do find this to be a pretty even matchup. Maybe even the most of the four play-ins that we get. But I kind of like Phoenix here. I think they are just a slight step above the Portland Trailblazers. I don't think either of these teams has a real shot of upsetting the apple cart in the West, but I think Phoenix gets a pretty good performance here. That they do have a bit more playoff experience than Portland. I think that's going to win out. And then you look at Clippers against Golden State, and it's a couple of veteran teams trying to hold on, just trying to drag this thing across the finish line. I like the Clippers here. I think if Kawhi is healthy, he's the best player in this, even with Steph coming back and everything like that. The injuries have ravaged Golden State the last couple of last couple of months, last couple of seasons. I just don't think they have enough in the tank, even with the Clippers maybe being a little bit shorthanded. But we've seen Kawhi take over in these spots. Now, we've seen Curry take over in these spots too. So we'll see what he has and what he can do here in this series. But I like the Clippers there in that spot. I guess it would be Portland against the Clippers. I think I would go Clippers there too. Again, just with Kawhi, just to be able to get it across. But then who knows if we're asking 2 games in a row here. So we will see. The West proper matchups that we have right now, Lakers against Houston. This would be a really intriguing series if Luka and Reeves were healthy. They are not. And even if they are able to check back in, I don't know how much I would trust it. Houston was a team that I thought could win a championship if they were healthy, but they've just lost so much of what I think would make them dangerous. And I don't know if they ever fully answered a lot of the questions around those injuries. They are still a very good offensive rebounding team, and they're still a very good offensive team. But when it comes down now to playoff time, comes down to those crunch time moments, even against the Lakers here, like, who is leading the ball up the floor? Who is getting them into that offense? And can they survive without an Adams in that spot? I think they get a good matchup here with the Lakers. Dominating has certainly had his moments this year, but I think that's one that they can kind of exploit. The no Luka and Reeves does take a lot of the drama out of this one, though. So I do like Houston in this one. Denver against Minnesota. I find this one really interesting because these are two teams that have started to build up a bit of a rivalry over the last couple of seasons with playoff matchups and stuff like that. And they both have clear ways that they would win. But like for Denver, their offense is great. For Minnesota, offense is good, defense is great, right? And then when you look at the flip side of those matchups, again, Denver is better on offense, and Minnesota, I think, is taking a step back on offense, even with what I thought was a good trade deadline. Minnesota is better on defense, and I think Denver has taken a step back on defense. So each side, their strength has gotten stronger, but in the end, it's still Jokic. And Murray is back. They're working pretty well. If Watson can give them any kind of minutes coming off of an injury, they've really worked on improving their depth. It hasn't really hit in the way that I think a lot of us thought it would this season. The MPJ trade hasn't really hit the way we thought it would this season. Love the offseason that they had, and they're still third. But it does feel like there's a bit more of a ceiling on this team this season than there is in the past, but I don't think that ceiling includes bumping up against Minnesota, so I like the Nuggets in this spot. Philadelphia taking on Orlando in the East now in the 7-8. Wildly disappointing season with some of the injury issues, and you can say that for both sides, but for Orlando, they have to win this. And unless they go to the conference finals, the coach is getting fired anyway, but this has been such a disaster after all they gave up for Bane and everything there. And I think there's honestly a lesson with that and with how Bridges is doing with the Knicks. And it's something I've got caught up in where you have like Bane to the Magic made so much sense because this team could defend like no other. And they just had trouble getting the offense going. And Bane felt like it could be the final piece for this offense to be good enough with a championship caliber defense to have them have a real shot this year in the East. And it hasn't worked. And I kind of compare it to Bridges with the Knicks, where they gave up a ton to bring this guy in, but it felt like at the time they were maybe a Bridges away from being a legitimate championship contender. And so it's one of those ones that it ends up being worth it if you can go win that championship, but you still have to give the appropriate value in a trade because now it looks like just a disaster with the Bane deal. And the Bridges one is getting a lot of fans out in New York pretty frustrated as well. I don't know why the Knicks are getting a drive-by in this part, but just something I've been thinking of with this. I still think, again, it all depends on Philadelphia's health and everything. I think like playoff-wise, Orlando can really lock things down on defense. I just don't trust them enough to be able to score in the big moments where Philadelphia, I think, again, depending on health and all of that, has guys that at least can do that. So I do think Philly wins this one here. Charlotte against Miami. Charlotte's been one of the best stories of the back half of the season. Can they do it under the playoff lights against Heat culture and Bam Adebayo, who can put up 83 points in a game? We'll see about that. I don't think either of these teams beats Orlando in the second part of the play-in, though. The two series that we do know about in the East, Cleveland taking on Toronto. The Raptors, love them. They've struggled against high-level teams this season. I think the big matchup here for the Raptors is how do they handle the guards with the Cleveland Cavaliers? On radio out here in Calgary, we had Kai Gamage on and talking about that matchup specifically. Like, quickly, he's not the worst defender, but he's not a lockdown guy by any stretch of the imagination. RJ, I think you could probably put him in that kind of category as well. And then going up against Harden and Donovan Mitchell, that doesn't feel ideal, where the young guys you have off the bench probably feel like the better lockdown guys, but are you going to really make that big of a move to start them? So I'll be interested to see how Toronto can kind of match up in this series with those guys and how they try to play this. Cleveland is a better team. No question about that. It is just Cleveland has really stumbled when it gets to playoff time, and James Harden doesn't give you a whole lot more confidence around that. So we'll see what can kind of come out of that. But for Toronto, if they're going to advance beyond this point, they're going to have to hope that Cleveland slips on a banana peel a couple of times. Knicks against Atlanta. I think the wings of the Hawks and how great they've been able to play in this back part of the season, that is going to give New York a bit of a scare. But I do think there's going to be enough moments where the Knicks can kind of match those guys. And then there's just nothing that can compare to Brunson and Cat over on the Atlanta after that portion. So it's been a fun story for Atlanta. You guys know, if you've watched any of my stuff, I'm not the biggest Trae Young fan. So it's been fun to see this team step up without him and make this run here into the playoffs. But again, I just don't think they're as good as the New York Knicks are. So those are just my thoughts on where we're at playoffs wise right now. I am sure some fan bases disagree with me. So hit me up in the comments or in the chat if you're watching this live, and we can have at it in there. Tall John over on Twitch. This is not a shot at the Jazz, but probably a good year for them to be done. And Utah don't have to try and schedule balance two teams in that arena, giving the Mammoth crew a chance to focus on ice quality and environment with me expecting a sold out standing room only playoff game. Yeah, you're right. Like that would have been quite the thing to kind of balance in year one or year two. Year two for Utah. Trying to make all of that work. That would be a lot. And you're fine to take shots at Utah. This has been a pretty despicable tanking season for them, and I'm hoping that they're done with this tanking thing with the acquisition of Triple J at the deadline. And probably one more good draft pick here to go for them. So you can take shots at Utah. It's totally fine. All right. So again, that's going to wrap it up here for the basketball talk. But if you got more hoops that you want to chat with, throw it in the chat, whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube if you're watching live. And we can keep that conversation going, or I can bounce back to it anyway once I'm wrapped up with whatever segment I am in at the time. And if you are listening to this but want Couch Potato Diary with you in a bit more of a convenient fashion wherever you go, just search the Couch Potato Diary podcast. Again, this is the 1000th episode of the Couch Potato Diary podcast, and it's available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods.